Welcome to HatchNOW. I'm Talya Jacobson. How has social media started turning opinions into facts? What kinds of challenges have high school students been facing in the world of COVID-19? And should personal trainers be treated as psychologists? These are the topics we will be talking about today. But first, Commonwealth Bank has recently conducted an internal investigation into their app. To find out what is happening with one of Australia's biggest banks, we head to Mansour Shukoor, who has been looking into this issue. Mansour, what has CommBank found?
Well, CommBank has been looking into their app for the past 3 months, and they found that transfers as little as $1 were being used to abuse fellow CommBank customers. The CommBank app allows transfers of money that is sent with a short message justifying the purchase. However, according to CommBank General Manager of Community Service, Catherine Fitzpatrick, there were over 8,000 instances of these messages being used to abuse customers.
That's a very strange thing for someone to come up with. Has CommBank planned to take any action?
Well, CommBank has stated in an official press release that customers' bank accounts will be suspended. However, due to the unprecedented nature of the investigation and the findings within the investigation, the length of the suspension is still uncertain.
So, what kinds of messages are people receiving?
Well, due to confidentiality agreements signed by CommBank customers, these messages will remain private, and any findings within the investigation will not be released publicly. However, we did speak with a CommBank employee who chose to remain anonymous, and they did not want their views to be seen as that of Commonwealth. And they stated that enough was not being done and the suspension.
Thank you for that, Mansour. An incredibly interesting conversation there. Now onto the topic of social media and society. With the constant global events happening over the past 6 months, people are turning to whatever sources of information they have available. The influence and reach of social media has made it one of the first we look to, but who are we listening to and just how reliable is it? Erin has been investigating this. Erin, whose voices are we paying attention to on social media?
Well, the first half of 2020 has been quite the roller coaster. From the January bushfires and droughts to the COVID-19 lockdown, and even now the Black Lives Matter protests inspired by the killing of George Floyd in America. We've reached out to the public to ask them just who they're listening to and who they're relying on for their information when they go on social media. Answers predominantly came back as bigger accounts such as news organizations, accounts which share testimonies from black protesters and frontline workers, and interestingly, influencers.
So why do people believe social media is trustworthy?
Well, it's all about the conversation. With 500 million active users on Instagram alone, people just want to be a part of it. They want to be up to date with the current hashtags and trends, and even the current events. Statistics and graphics made by bigger accounts may seem official and easy to repost or reshare, retweet to your family and friends, but unless there is tangible research and evidence behind these statistics, then we do need to remain vigilant as a collective audience.
So how do the opinions and false information spread on social media impact those who are trying to educate others with facts?
Yep, so I spoke to a nurse who's been on the front line of COVID-19, Jonah Laurel, and we talked about how she feels about people who have been influenced by opinions and even conspiracy theories about the pandemic. This is what she had to say.
As a healthcare worker, it makes me sad that people do not want to comply. I don't know if they just want to be trendsetters or they just simply do not want to follow rules, because I have no idea. But yeah, it does make me sad and a bit disappointed.
The panic and fear spread on social media about COVID-19 has also seen our healthcare workers targeted outside of their homes, on public transport and in the streets, and it is beginning to impose on their mental and emotional well-being.
And it is those workers who are so essential to our community. Thank you, Erin. To the COVID-19 pandemic now, and students have been coping differently with learning online and not being able to go to school. Riordan has been in talks with a few of them to find out just how they've been coping. Ashley, what are the biggest difficulties and challenges students are facing when learning online?
Well, through the interviews that I conducted, I found that the biggest challenges these students face were fairly similar. Their workload increased, making it harder for them to stay focused. The face-to-face confrontation that they receive at school makes it easier to keep learning and actually stay focused.
It was just a lot harder to learn online because even though you still have the interaction because you're still on video, it's not the same as being in a classroom, and people are less likely to ask questions. And I think that was the main issue, is that people didn't want to ask questions.
I found it hard to be motivated to do the work. That sometimes, like, I didn't have a teacher there, like, down my throat telling me, okay, yeah, you have to do this. I didn't face any technical problems, but I found it hard to stay motivated to overcome, like, just be like, okay, I don't want to do this.
And due to social distancing, many missed their friends and the opportunity to talk to a teacher if they needed to. With the learning facilities that they receive at school, they find it so much easier to get the work done, and the teacher is right there if they need help.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Now onto a topic that has crossed the minds of many gym goers. As we begin our fitness journeys, we develop a relationship with our personal trainers. But does that make it okay to share personal information with them and lean on them for advice? Blake Manus has been looking into this. Blake, why is this happening?
This is happening now more than ever as we are relying on deep and meaningful conversations. With workplaces and borders closing, people are now turning to what can be their only daily source of communication, and that's personal training. Because of this, people are starting to look at their personal trainers as a leaning rock. The concern here is that personal trainers are not qualified to help you with your mental health. And at the same time, you're putting yourself at risk of being exposed to advice from someone with a lack of experience and training in that field.
So why do you think people are opening up to their personal trainers?
Well, people look up to their personal trainers. They have the perfect body, perfect attitude, and they seem to have it all together. This is being recognised by certain institutes who are now teaching their students on how to deal with these scenarios. Experts are now becoming concerned as this still does not qualify personal trainers to help people with their mental health. Here is what counselling psychologist Tristan Snell had to say.
Personal trainers, as far as I'm aware, there is no learning outcome or training requirement around mental health. So there's no guarantee that the advice that you would get or the help you would get from a personal trainer in relation to mental health would be helpful or evidence-based.
Also, some people do not believe that they are suffering mental health issues, and they see this as a benefit as they are paying for one service and only getting two. So while no one owns the right to counsel, you should be extremely careful when offering information to someone who lacks qualifications.
Thank you for that, Blake. And for anyone who would like to seek professional help, please do so. And finally, restaurants and pubs have been reopening, but where are the local supporters? A record number of no-shows means less chance of survival for the hospitality industry. Mia Alcordo has been in chats with local industry workers. Mia, how has this impacted them?
Yeah, that's right. So I spoke with Manuel Taron. He is the owner of a small bar and restaurant in Darlinghurst called Bar Tupper, which he runs alongside his wife, Sarah. Manuel told me that not only is there a monetary hardship which venues face when customers decide not to show up, but there's also an emotional weight that's put on the owners and members of staff. Then there's also the pressures of managing customers wanting to dine in that needs to be handled. Venues can only hold table reservations for a certain amount of time, and a no-show only means a loss of a sale from that booking. And also the potential to make money from that table from walk-in customers that were rejected because the table was being held for a reservation. Here's more from Manuel.
What we didn't expect was for people to just decide to not show up for their reservations, which was kind of devastating in a way of trying to coordinate bookings and walk-ins and trying to coordinate the expectations of the government and the customers that we had. And people just decided not to show up. It was a much more difficult burden and a much more difficult task to try and manage.
I also spoke with Nick Chapman. He is a bartender who works at the Morrison. He told me that since the venues exceed their maximum capacity a lot quicker these days, it affects the income of the staff. Say a venue can only hold about 20 people at a time and a table of 5 cancels, that's already a quarter of their pay.
So what can venues do to reduce no-shows and minimise loss of revenue?
Yeah, so a lot of venues have taken the route of charging booking fees with the disclaimer that in the event of a complete no-show, you will be charged a certain fee per person. Other places are setting minimum charges from the menu. Some places are only offering set menus and reducing which dishes are available on their menu to minimise waste. And at some venues, you're required to pay for your order in advance.
So how much is the government helping these businesses stay afloat?
Yeah, so to a certain extent, the government is helping out, like the government putting forward a mandatory code of conduct for commercial rentals was definitely a positive thing for the hospitality industry, but there are still plenty of workers and owners who do feel like assistance has come much later for them. Owners are still dealing with landlords, creditors, and meeting the expectations of both the government and the public. Then you've got workers who are sort of surviving on JobKeeper payments still. There's also a large chunk of the casual hospitality workforce who are international students and they don't qualify for any government assistance. So slowly but surely things are starting to seem, back to normal to most, but the industry is still struggling. So what restaurants are asking for now is to simply show your support by turning up to a booking or at least notifying them if you will be a no-show.
Hopefully local businesses will be getting more support from their communities soon. Thanks, Mia. And that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank our reporters and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.